So like hindi na to appreciate right now for like proper to so can actually be able to like do one of like the main doors and then I was thinking appreciate that there will be like a bunch of like main kind of like for to enter into like the end of the level quick. So like for proper right now would be so can actually be able to like enter through so can actually so easily be able to enter through like one of like the main doors and then they're into like the energy numbers preamble to protect while it has already been revealed that like fully CCTV that the energy that what we lack is like fully CCTV mode while that's already been revealed. Yet what properties of can actually be able to like enter so easily and enter into straight into like the energy level. I'm stressing in my person that exercise direction through which like proper from like breaking like the grids to the grill like gates to from that point to that the precise path which that proper made towards that precise entrance door into entering into like the energy laboratory building that basically throughout that entire path like the precise CCTV that are being monitored would be that facility number of CCTVs along that precise path will be precisely monitored by one that the section of all the CCTVs along that path will be monitored by one person, and there will be like all these great number of sections of like that are all this great number of CCTVs along all the surrounding directions of like the entirety of like the energy laboratory monitored by different people respectively. So like the next person that monitoring this exact directional path of like the section of CCTV through which like the precise path through which like proper would have and right now we would have entered so casually through the door one of the doors of like the that hopper right now has entered into like the energy laboratory that section like the person who would be like modern the CCTV of that section would have definitely fallen asleep. It's definitely one person that I'm working and hence why like a hopper was so easily able to like enter into like the energy laboratory is like one person that I'm working. That's like the more likely person that I'm working that way hopper getting lucky. So like the other person that I'm considering is that basically he might have totally seen hopper through the CCTV. He might have not fallen asleep and like the person monitoring like the CCTV might have already seen like hopper making his way up like breaking like the grid like gate like from there to like hopper as hopper made his way towards like the energy laboratory that and that time like he might have been seeing like hopper making his way into like infiltrating into like the energy laboratory for like I'm considering like he might have taken necessary steps and precautions and maybe like a trap would be like specially set up within like the energy laboratory to precisely trap and catch the hopper like hopper make his way, would be making his way indoors within like the energy laboratory, like the other possibility that I'm considering, but like I'm considering that like the more least likely possibility that I'm considering. Definitely more likely possibility that I'm considering is like the person monitoring will be having like fallen asleep and hence like the that sort of reason being like resulting in like proper being like and being able to like so casually enter to like through one of the doors of like the energy outer doors of like the energy laboratory and like Hopper stealthily being able to like I'm considering like Hopper not being able to do much other than like take a bunch of photos and I'm considering that when you specifically about consideration that like that precise location within like that not the laboratory where like the whole passageway or like the portal scheme entering into like the parallel dimension or like the parallel world like that whole room entire room would be like tightly sealed and securely locked so like luckily considering even through the iteration Hopper on the at most would be only finding that like sealed tightly sealed and securely locked door which like Hopper would be like only be able to like see it and what sort of price like also won't be able to like book right through to like still thinking about personal information that like one possibility that I'm also bringing is for like pop up to like as he attempts to like break through that door like basically the alarm ringing. That's like one possibility that I'm able to predict. The second possibility that I'm able to predict is for like Hopper like basically the second possibility that I'm able to predict is while Hopper will be trying to like break open that door like while precisely Hopper would be attempting like only starting to attempting to that like at that point self was brain. through the internal CCTVs within like the energy laboratory, like the people monitoring like the internal CCTVs within like indoor within like the energy laboratory or already spotting copper, and so like them coming after copper at that precise point. So like copper now being able to like be able to like break down that or so like that way that Hopper being forced to like retreat and escape from like the Nazi laboratory and Hopper succeeding in that was also the scenario that I was saying. Yet like I'm also saying definitely my the impression that I'm leaning more towards to this basically that through this infiltration and the thing Hopper would be most likely by the time he would be escaping that he would have totally figured out that basically that precise ultimate secure so the room behind it would contain like the true secret behind that or the disappearance of Will as well as Barbara and Dr. Brenner's connection to it. Like basically that truth would be like precisely present behind like that precise securely locked, tightly locked door would be along the lines that much like I was figuring out before he would be like really creeping and escaping from like the laboratories like the highly likely scenario that I'm just thing. And I'm also definitely putting Hopper would definitely be right now as he's like infiltrating into like the laboratory, he would definitely be having like a camera with him. So like I was different from taking a lot of photos of like everything you see within like the energy laboratory. And Hopper will be totally planning on like taking eventually taking all that photos to like show to like that size school science teacher. And such a thing happening is also definitely when the Hopper successfully escaping from like the energy laboratory eventually and Hopper getting the photos that he is taking to like science teacher and like the science teacher totally like being shocked at what he would be seeing through that photos and like him revealing a lot about like this energy, lot of crucial information about like this energy laboratory to like Hopper. Yet like even though it would be like important information, yet like I'm also bringing like most of those information I'm also bringing would be like mostly related to like the maybe like kind of like a bit about like the experiments conducted superhuman experiments like this from like a level to like gain her super powers like basically through this only like details and information connected to just like the experiments powers alone rather than like through the pictures like Hopper would be able to gain the knowledge of through like the science teacher in like Hopper school like the scenario that I was defining still Hopper being in the dark when it actually involved like the connection to like Furnace Laboratory and like the alien like research and like the abduction and all that. Like still when it comes to like that crucial information about the brain of still right now in the present not being able to like get access to that level of information even through like the photos that how will be like taken of everything he will be seeing like within like the laboratories like the eventual scenario that I'm sure of like and my good brain yes, like my very precious definitely for like without much delay, like I'm the different definitely Jonathan would be like totally desperate to like get like the information about like the faceless creature, humanoid like creature, about like the information about that and like that first photo as well of Jonathan of Barbara containing that a bit of that creature like basically and like the sighting of like Nancy, like basically what she has claimed to see, like the very same thing, and the fact that like Jonathan's mother as well, Will's mother as well, seem to have told the same thing. Like basically all this information, like Jonathan would be desperate to like get it to Hopper as soon as possible. It's also like the scenario that I'm going to be. But like with like Lonnie showing up to like Will's home, like basically that definitely prepping like creating a lot of kind of like disturbance for like Hopper into like investigation like for Hopper would be like definitely wanting to like talk to like Jonathan and his mother and basically gain all that information but like I'm considering Jonathan would be like having to like uh, without Lonnie finding out like I'm considering with like Lonnie showing up like I'm considering like it creating a lot more trouble for like Will's mother as well as Jonathan rather than Lonely would only be a trouble rather than any sort of like a comfort or like a solutions like the eventual scenario that I'm talking about. And like the moment Hopper will be showing up to like the next time to like Will's home, like at that point still I'm going to like Lonnie to like naively like pick a fight with like Hopper due to like Lonnie's insecurities down to like Hopper. And I think like this like Will's mother, his wife and like Hopper having dated in like the pub and basically like all that like basically that insecurity within like Lonely approach the fucking would be like literally totally coming out and basically like Lonely trying to pick up fight with like Hopper and all that. And even though I'm preferring totally hope to like put Lonnie like in his place at that point, still I'm also preferring for Lonnie to like take it all out on like for Jonathan and Bill's mother at that point. It's also like the eventual scenario that I'm preferring. So like I'm preferring from after like with like Lonnie showing up to like Bill's home, like I'm preferring like from this point on like the whole interaction between like Jonathan and Will's mother and Hopper, like all that would be at the station rather than like that interacting and then discussing things at like Will's home. That different from this point on won't be happening for a while until like eventually like different like Will's mother as well as Jonathan will be getting fed up of that alone that different eventually like Will's mother totally telling Lonnie to like get out of the home and live in that way. That's like the winter scenario that I'm justifying. Like the disturbance event that from this point on, eventually slowly that learning would be creating would be like totally pushing that little bit of learning would be eventually totally going over the edge and basically like eventually Will's mother getting fed up and telling Lonnie to like get out and go back and basically that way eventually like delivering like it would be like after a while that I'm delivering like Lonnie would be like leaving like with home and until then I'm delivering like the whole meeting and discussion and like the exchange of information between like Jonathan and Will's mother and Hopper and delivering most likely will be taking place uh, in at like stations rather than at the home is like the scenario that I'm considering. Hopper will be like I was definitely to and feeling empathetic towards like Jonathan and his mother and with like it's only due to like the result of lonely like Hopper eventually I was won't be like wanting like him being like a reason for like Lonnie creating like issues and problems for like with mother and Jonathan, especially in their current situation and everything. So essentially because of that, like I was wondering, like from that point on, like from this point on, like the whole meeting between like Hopper and Jordan and Will's mother, like will be all at the station. It's like there is a scenario that I was going to bring up. Also, definitely not very impressive right now with like Lonnie showing up to like Will's home. That definitely would be specific to like consideration that rather than a comfort like which like for Will's mother in her current situation, like would even though she right now like just by seeing Lonnie like her initial thought would be that of like feelings would be that of like a comfort like feeling that there's like someone to like help her like still ambassador like without much great delays and like ambassador Lonnie totally creating all sorts of like trouble and Lonnie feeling like being like more and more of like a such an extreme that in like the current situation for like Phil's mother and Jonathan, especially right now with like even Jonathan having finally realized that like his mother is not going crazy that like everything his mother has said is actually true like especially with that like ambassador and with like Lonnie like the moment Lonnie would be even entering when Som at that point said learning would be like definitely obviously seeing like all that fairy like great number of like fairy like fully put up like within like when Som and straight away I'm about to bring like Learning only thing is that like his ex-wife like his mother like totally going crazy and about to bring now with and like about to bring him totally trying to forcefully like take down all those like take down all those fairy lights within like Will's home. And Will's mother like totally desperately trying to stop Donnie and like bring around that time Jonathan as well will be showing up and Jonathan as well will be totally trying to like stop Lonnie from taking out all those fairy lights and from the bring at that point for Lonnie thinking like Lonnie totally feeling that like they are both going crazy like Jonathan as well as his mother are totally going crazy and basically that way like that itself I'm also trying to create like a lot of like a quarrel between like Lonnie and like and Jonathan and Will's mother. It's definitely my don't remember and I'm definitely putting like Lonnie being being adamant about like wanting to like take Jonathan as well as like his mother to like to and definitely like very impressions from like Lonnie to be totally adamant about like wanting to like take like Vince Mother like his ex-wife as well as like Jonathan to like a hospital and get treatment and considering like Donnie would be trying I'm considering Donnie trying to like tell Jonathan that basically you shouldn't that he shouldn't support his mother's like crazy ways and all that, like if we along such lines, and I was bringing like that itself causing like a bit of like a quarrel, and I was bringing like neither Jonathan nor like his mother like actually putting in serious effort to like convince Johnny, especially because of like how hard it had already been for like Vic's mother to even convince Jonathan or Sheriff Hopper. So like Lonnie of all like the bottom of Lonnie of all people like being convinced would be like that much like that would be like one thing that like Vince Mother and Jonathan will be part to but that will be part of this for them. So like I'm Muslim then not even putting bothering to like put that much of like even an effort to like even convince Lonnie's like the scenario that I'm building, and that coupled with like the eventual fight quarrel and the fight that will be happening between like Lonnie and Hopper and all that. And I was wondering like as for like how exactly Lonnie might deal with for like there was a scenario like how exactly that might happen. I'm putting two possibilities. One possibility is like the possibility that I'm still thinking on to is basically that like eventually like Will's mother being like totally fed up with like Lonnie being such an extreme burden to them that like I'm really like Will's mother like shouting at Lonnie to like get out of the home and leave the home, and that way like an extremely enraged Lonnie like leaving Will's home eventually is like one possibility that I'm also thinking of the scenario that I'm into. The second possible scenario is that I'm also bringing the store like Lonnie to like totally in an extremely prejudiced manner, like totally not believe, not even remotely believe anything that Will's mother, as well as like his ex-wife, as well as like Jonathan will be telling him, and I'm going to bring like eventually like at one night, like I'm going to bring like maybe Lonnie in the middle of the night, like just waking up to like get a glass of water or something, and at that point, like Lonnie himself, like shockingly witnessing for himself, like possibly like the uh, possibly like and that says humanoid alien race are trying to like come out of like the walls of like Willis Hall. So basically like Lonnie himself shockingly witnessing that in like the middle of the night. And that like at that very instant it's like Lonnie quickly running away, getting in his car and straight away driving back to his like country or like this like current actual home. Like basically, and Lonnie never even bothering to like return back at all. Like that's like the other possible scenario through which like I'm considering like Lonnie to be like eventually leaving Will's home. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm considering. And I was very much so definitely also I'm still sticking to my impression that like eventually so through such a manner and definitely working like eventually Lonnie definitely won't be like staying at like Vince's home. Like Lonnie will be totally leaving Vince's home. Is that the scenario that I'm considering? And eventually by the time like eventually Sheriff Hopper like putting in all of his efforts and finally by eventually definitely his efforts would definitely have like eventually have like such a pivotal and major role to play eventually in that win being saved. And at that point, by then, like that absolute bond between like Vince's mother and Hopper and Jonathan would have grown so deeply that by the time Hopper and all of them would be like finally succeeding in like saving Vince. Like at that point, like Hopper would be only having like a new family, and Hopper would be like totally at that point would be living with like with like his mother and Jonathan and Will at that point. It's like the final eventual scenario that I'm going to on the Brianna in the Rainbow. Okay, so like definitely one of the reaction right now was like Hopper already having like infiltrated like the end of the laboratory to like the point of like reaching like the precise tightly secured area, which would be precisely the path that would be leading to that precise room where like the whole portal to like the parent world would be definitely very incredible. So like the scenario that I was developing is definitely that like even though Hopper managed to like hopefully get through like still even after being found out, still able to bring like just that with that one security guard like still like not being taken down by Hopper. Like like into like straight away at this moment just like run off to like basically to inform like Brenner, and straight away like the moment Brenner will be like finding out about like Hopper like infiltration straight away able to bring like Brenner showing up along with his like whole arsenal of like great number of security team, highly skilled security team. I'm going to bring them all collectively quickly showing up, and I'm going to bring like the scenario to be like basically offer like during that time, like considering Hopper would by that time, like Hopper would have like frantically searched throughout that entire area, like through that slightly secured area cluelessly, and I'm also bring like Hopper precisely seeing that portal like thing from a distance, like the scenario that I'm going to bring, like Hopper precisely by the scenario that I'm going to bring is like Hopper right now is for like Hopper to potentially be able to like finally find that precise mysterious portal like thing on like the side of like the one wall, one of like the wall, and Hopper will be clueless as to like clueless and extremely curious as to like what that is. And I'm about to bring precisely like the moment Hopper would be seeing that portal from a distance. At that point itself, I'm about to bring Hopper would be exactly captured by another like security team. It's like the scenario that I'm about to bring, and Hopper at that point won't be able to like do anything. It won't be able to like get to that entering like that portal or anything else like the scenario that I'm going to bring. The scenario that I'm going to bring is like right now for like Hopper only be able to like see that portal from a distance, and Hopper still not being able to like confused and not being able to like, figure out what exactly that is. Yet like Fred the writer itself like Hopper runners feel like capturing Hopper, and I'm going to bring like and my very impressions that like for perfectly capturing Hopper like about to bring like runner or like ordering to like security team to like take Hopper to bring Hopper into like this interrogation room, and they are like about to bring like in runners person like right in front of runner like the security is like powerful security team about to bring to be like totally forcefully interrogating like for Hopper, and I'm about to bring like Hopper keeping his like lips sealed is like the scenario of so like at that point I was considering maybe for like Brenner to like ask during the whole interrogation Brenner asking Hopper like what exactly does he know, and and at that point I'm considering maybe for like Hopper to like only keep his lips sealed and remain silent, and just Hopper on the other hand just asking Brenner like shouting at Brenner and asking what exactly are you doing in this like laboratory like this here. Brenner not performing like anything, and like Brenner not being able to like get anything out of Hopper as to answer to like what exactly Brenner knows, and what exactly Hopper knows, and then at that point I was bringing Brenner totally telling his like security guards to like take the life of Hopper is like, and Brenner straight away leaving that role and leaving like the laboratory like the scenario that I'm looking at. So precisely after like Brenner would be like leaving like the laboratory itself, like I'm considering as like the security guard will be about to take Hopper's life. At that point I'm considering Hopper using his like skills like totally overpowering all the security guards and successfully escaping from like the laboratory. So this is like one possibility that I'm going to bring. The other possibility that I'm going to bring is for there to not even be any interrogation. Like the moment Brenner and his team will be like precisely capturing Hopper, precisely as like Hopper will be just being able to like see that portal from a distance, like itself, like Brenner and his security team like capturing Hopper. And straight away, like Brenner ordering his like security team to like take the life of Hopper, to silence Hopper and take the life of Hopper. And like Bruno straight away leaving like the lovely laboratory and Hopper at that point like basically as like the security guards will be trying to take Hopper's life, like Hopper using his skills like still powering them and still successfully managing to like barely escape alive and out of like the lovely laboratory. Just like then the scenario other possible scenario that I'm going to bring him as a very sort of live as a brain production is for like after this current infiltration to like runners like energy lab or gamble separating that the very next time for one would be like attempting his like next secret stealthy infiltration into like runners like energy lab or gamble separating like for that to like not happen anytime soon at all. It's definitely one of the precisely because of this infiltration attempt by Hopper like I'm going to runner tightening up like the security of like energy laboratory to like such extreme levels. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. That I'm going to bring like Hopper. And hope that would be like far too obvious for Hopper as well. For like Brenner to do such a thing would be as well far too obvious for Hopper. So like even Hopper as well would be totally thinking, especially after like Hopper having seen like the how skilled like the security in like the security members in like the energy level of like the final speak and all that. Like basically at that point, I'm also bring maybe Hopper to totally like think more of in like logical sense at that point, and like him only like him not straight away like planning. another infiltration into like brother's lab, but like I was putting Hopper like only deciding to like launch his like only launching his like next infiltration into like brother's lab only in like the distant future is like the other partner. It's like also like about the scenario that I was doing, and I'm also predicting what the possibility of like since like Pranav just like a powerful person and like a person maybe like Pranav even using his like influence as well after like Hopper the infiltration attempt, like even after like I'm able to eventually hope to like would be successfully escaping from Foreigner's laboratory. Even then I'm considering the next move that I'm considering for Foreigner to make at that point would be I'm considering maybe like Foreigner only using his like influence and power to like maybe like get Hopper most likely just not it's also like an imagine possible scenario that I'm something like that way Hopper getting dismissed from like the police force and that way like still ambassador like and even though at that point Hopper won't be officially having his job and officially won't be like a police still ambassador like Hopper deciding not to give up at all and Hopper like a determined Hopper like at that point doing his like private investigation into finding out the truth behind like Reynolds' connection to like the secure that everything. So like the scenario of like the possible scenarios as well that I'm just covering right now in the version. Okay, so like definitely when the impression right now that's for like the say for room within like Reynolds like another laboratory for right now seeing this like drawing. I'm wondering that drawing that precise room itself would be like the precise room where 11 might have been precisely locked up in by Brenner. It's definitely by Brenner. So like the drawing on the wall, that basically would be precisely a drawing by precisely like precisely 11 might have drawn in lecture classes. Which is like in Brenner has forced had in lecture class has forced 11 to like to whole experiment with like the cat and everything. So like it would give that memory of 11 that 11 might have definitely drawn through like that drawing. It's definitely by the and that's for like there being like a rope as well part of like that drawing like I'm preparing like that would be maybe like how like forever might have instilled that fear in 11 that basically if she doesn't if like whenever like 11 might have objected to doing any of like the experiments like that might have been how like brother might have instilled that fear and forced 11 to like basically do her experiments by precisely showing her that basically that precise there would be like a precise room where like there would be like that oak tight and like 11 totally threatening her with like hanging her if she doesn't do her experiments. Like there would be like multiple ways in which like Brenner might have threatened and it will fear into 11 to like forcefully make her do the experiment and one might be through like this like threatening of like hanging 11 or and like the other might be like basically putting 11 into this room with like while at the same time turning off all the lights and basically taking that way LeBron might have totally taken advantage of like the fact that 11 was so extremely afraid of like the dark to basically to like Brenner might have totally that way use these two methods to like basically to create that absolute fear within 11 and he like totally control 11 with that fear and that way Brenner might have tried to like forcefully made her do the experiences the element of brain. So like this might be what might have been like depicted through like the drawing where like the drawing has like a rope hanging from like the wall with like a loop in its leg, circular loop in its leg would be like the best connection for like what would be depicted through that drawing of that rope would be by 11 would be precisely exactly this is definitely a possibility that I'm going to again about the reemerging. Okay, so like definitely my person to reimpression right now for like the best words of will to his mother that my can friends had heard like home empty, dark and cold. Like it would only have to do with like home I'm speaking about the reimpression that it would be definitely a parallel word. So like home would be like precisely Will would have referred that to like Will, the precise location where Will was and behind that translucent like place in like the wall of like Will's home on the other side of it, Swervin was precisely being like the parallel world and like the parallel dimension, and can like Will at that point being on the other side of like the parallel version of Will's home. So like that would be what Will might have tried to communicate through like the light home and it being empty, like basically by the word empty, like we might have been trying to communicate and tell that basically like the majority of like the humans in the parallel world. Like there would definitely be like parallel versions of like all the humans in like the real world that might have been present in like the parallel world. So like I'm considering uh, all of their parallel versions might have been taken the life of by like the by the experiment of like the parallel version of like run up on the parallel version of 11, which might have went wrong and basically might have resulted in like the parallel version of 11 being turned into like the first alien, like humanoid, like danger creature of definitely not going to return. That creature would be like the mother of like all the humanoid like creature, and it might have laid it on its own, and like the alien like creature, monster like creature, humanoid creature might have spread all throughout and caused like almost like the extinction of like humanity in like the parallel world. That's definitely my preferred version. So like that way, there will be only very few humans left, parallel version of humans in like the real world that would be even left alive in like the parallel world. Even exploring Barbara and like being trapped in like a parallel world is definitely my preferred version. So this would be like precisely what will might have through his like interaction with like his mother might have meant by empty. It's definitely my preferred version. Then like with being dark would totally have to do like these precise monsters like creatures like these humanoid creatures like them with them like traveling through like light sources like and considering like all the light sources all across like the parallel world might have been destroyed, like gotten destroyed each time these monster creatures would be traveling through like the light sources, like all those light sources might have gotten destroyed, definitely never been. So while with like these monster creatures traveling through the light sources and with like them most all the these monster creatures having taken the life of that and caused almost having caused like almost like the extinction of like the majority of the humans in like the parallel version of like humans living in like the parallel world. This would be what like they would have hinted and referred to through like empty and down. It's definitely my preference. Also, definitely my preference is that like there might not sun might not even be present in like the parallel world as well. It's definitely also my preference. So that's also like a possibility that I'm also bring. Like sun might actually not exist. So like that might be the reason for like maybe that might be like the also like one valid reason for like it like possibly being like the fundamental theory, for example, depending to the always last in like the parallel world. And then the different like the precise reason would be also that like the difference would be that sun won't exist in like the parallel world. It's also the clear theory. So like definitely according to my personal impression and those needs to check it about the impression that like the reason for like Will saying like it's being cold as well in like the parallel world will be definitely because of like most likely due to like there not existing a sun in like the parallel world. So like I'm considering that coupled with like the absence of like light so in like the parallel world which I'm also it's also considering really because of this reason it will be extremely cold in like the parallel world as well. And I'm considering like the parallel world and I'm considering like without the presence of sun, like I'm considering the ones, the humans that have been taken to like the parallel world for them to like survive as well. Like they would have to like depend on like flames and fire. It's definitely my preference. That would be like the only way for the humans survival. If for like the parallel world, humans in like the parallel world for them to like survive like fire would be like the only source. It's definitely my preference. So still, even with fire, like I'm just supporting like for them to like be able to like survive without the with like the complete absence of sun, like I'm considering there would definitely be a limit as like how long the humans might be able to like survive in like the parallel world. It's also definitely my preference. So like I'm considering maybe I'm considering even a remote possibility that like maybe these monsters like the creatures that can travel through like light sources and significant sources, like they might also possess some sort of like a unique power, and maybe it might be through that power that maybe that their unique power that might have even caused like the absence of sun in like the battle world as well, and for like the battle world to turn cold as well. It's definitely my preference. Also like about the data preference. So like I'm considering maybe like the battle world might have been uh, just as sunny and kind of like similar to like the real world as well. It's also like about the development and for all that to change and for like the majority of the humans in like the parallel world to like face almost like the complete extinction and all that might have totally and solely happened solely due to like foreigners the parallel version of foreigners going wrong. Uh, is like a possibility that I'm also possibly protect and most of the remedies. So like I'm also trying without like the sun, I'm also trying like out of the my reasons I'm also trying there won't be like sun in like the parallel world. I'm also trying like without the sun, like even for like the wind as well as like the people in like the parallel world. Remaining few humans left possibly would be left in like the parallel world for them to even be able to like survive as well would be like the times the time period where like they would be able to like survive in like the parallel world as well will be like greatly limited with like the absence of the sun. It's also like a possibility that I'm suffering and my brain pressure. So like before that, like the task would be for like without the sun, like even Will as well and Barbara as well being able to like survive even if they are able to like constantly avoid like the captivity from like the monsters with reasons still for them to be able to like survive without like the sun. The time period would be limited. So like the task would be for like Hopper and all of them, Mike and his friends and Hopper for Hopper or like Vince mother and Jonathan and Nancy, like for all of them to be able to like save Barbara and Will before their time runs out in like the parallel world with like them trapped there without the absence of sunlight. Them neither them would have to be like saved within like a certain like limit of like a time before like they eventually ends up dying with the absence of like the sun. It's also like so there will be that time limit is also like my personal impression right now. Okay, so like definitely I'm still getting my personal impression right now as for like the concept of like the veil of shadow that might of like my friends games like basically the alternate parallel dimension is like Barbara as well as Will are right now trapped in like that alternate parallel dimension initially might have had like absolutely nothing at all in like common to like the concept of like the veil of shadows. Definitely my book dimension like for like the veil of shadows to be like a dark reflection of like the real world and for it to be filled with monsters and for it to be like a place of like decay and that like basically all that might have eventually end up being similar to the parallel world might have eventually over time might have ended up being similar to all that and similar to like the veil of shadow solely due to the parallel version of Brenner and his like experiments going wrong. It's definitely my personal until like that experiment of Brenner had gone wrong. I'm considering like the parallel world in which like Barbara as well as Will is now in like basically might have had like absolutely almost nothing in common at all to like the concept of like the veil of shadows. It's definitely my personal way and impression. Okay, so like definitely my personal way and impression right now with like everyone getting ready for like when Fiona like I'm definitely something huge would be like probably happening during when Fiona it's definitely my personal impression and then considering it will be most likely the scenario to be like even though Hopper has been captured like that, I'm considering like solely due to that reason like I'm considering Hopper definitely won't be present at when children know Hopper being able to like reveal to like the others that like it's like not the actual that the body of Will itself is like a dummy body that basically even that unprocessed of thing like Hopper would have not even been able to like get that information out to like not of it like not even to his like subordinates. Definitely I'm considering but so like definitely I'm considering for like institutions definitely I'm considering like all those people who are like part of like the team of Brenner I'm considering there will be that tight security even for like Vince Fiona definitely I'm considering but so like I'm considering um, even about different the priest would be like performing in ceremonies about the it would be like definitely one a member of like a member of like from like Brenner's team in disguise as a like a priest would be like the person that would be like when performing like the ceremonies definitely one would remember so like definitely one would remember that in order to make them convincing I'm definitely something like a new priest like showing up to the church in like the town of to the main church in like the town of Hawkins where like the body would be like would be able to be buried is definitely not the and that priest would be definitely to take the methods and repression would be like the one of the member of like Brenner's team in this guy is definitely not going to so like Brenner might have pulled or might have coordinated everything in such a manner to make it seem convincing to like everyone in like the in like the town of Hawkins that basically that priest is like an actual priest is definitely not on the revolution. So I'm considering it would be like still, I'm considering like Brenner's team would be like, and I'm considering like using that priest would be like in this case and would be one of the member of like Brenner's team. I'm considering definitely to tell like to tell all the masses of people who would have gathered to like attend to funeral to like maintain a distance like and I was ordering him to like make some sort of like an excuse to like for all of them to keep to maintain that distance from which body as like his body will be buried like and I'm considering it would be like potentially for another like a team member from like another team alone that would be like carrying his body and would be about to bury his body and then was wondering why what should be happening like all the remaining crowd of people, even like Will's family, like Will's mother and Jonathan, all of them being like forcefully told to like basically remain at a certain distance from like where Will's body would be in like the cemetery from where like Will's body would be like buried in front of them, but like at a for them to like maintain a distance. So like I was wondering definitely at that point, I was like, definitely Vince's mother won't be able to like handle it anymore. Right? I'm considering at that point, Vince's mother like, especially as like the body would be like about to be buried. Like I'm considering Vince's mother like totally charging in, and basically that's like the huge event that I'm considering to like happen. Where like Vince's mother like totally while absolutely no one would be expecting, while absolutely no one would be expecting, I'm considering Vince's mother like totally charging in straight towards like where like those members of like Brenner's team would be about to bury like Will's like dummy body and at that point I'm considering Will's mother like totally like somehow struggling her way to like basically being able to like push them away and somehow and basically like the fact that Will's body is like a dummy body and it's not the real Will uh, basically that numbers could be revealed in front of like the entire masses of like that entire crowd of people in front of that like Will's mother like totally exposing that like it's like the scenario that I was bringing and I was bringing precisely as like and especially this like even the like Hopper's absence like even though I was bringing Hopper definitely won't be able to like one certainly represent the still I was bringing like it would just be like Will's mother it would be like Jonathan as well as like Mike and his friends as well, who would be like well and fully aware that basically that's not the original will that's like being buried. So like I was going to say yes, that with and Nancy as well would be like fully aware that would be totally like confident that that's not the original will that's like, being buried. Like after like discovering everything to Jonathan like about like the faceless creatures and everything. So definitely, I was considering like the scenario to be like precisely as like Vince Mother would be rushing in and basically would and would be like totally exposing the light to that like it's like a dummy body in front of like the entire huge crowd. Like at that point, I was considering like a brand of team members like basically trying to like pull Vince's mother away from there and stop her. But like right himself, I was considering Jonathan and Nancy as well as like Mike and his friends as well, quickly rushing in to help Vince's mother and basically that way through that struggle still I'm going to bring like definitely that finally that truth that absolute truth to be revealed that basically it's like the dummy body of Will. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like I'm going to bring at that point for that absolute huge shock to like how they happen. So for like the entirety of like the people who are attending things to get that absolute shock with like the truth being revealed finally that like it's like a dummy body of Will. It's like the scenario that I'm different thing. So like from that point on, like basically and that way like Brenner's like strategy and everything totally backfiring on Brenner and basically that way like the extreme confusion over like all these things and over like this disappearance like basically still continuing like basically all around like all throughout like the town of Hawkins like the people of like the town of Hawkins from that point on starting to like talk them starting to talk and them shortly discussing and like I'm considering like this I'm considering maybe even ending up being in like the news as well. And the truth about like Vince Company body when like ending up being in like the news as well as like the scenario that I'm considering even though Runner would be using his absolute power and all of it like influence to like prevent that from happening. Still I'm considering exactly like how like cases against Runner and everything has still appeared in like the newspapers and everything like about like this time I was considering it to like show into like the news in like a more prominent manner. It's like the scenario that I'm considering, and that way like Pranav slowly trouble starting to follow Pranav is like the scenario that I'm considering and my real version. Still, my preparation for like Pranav to use all of his like influence and power to ensure that like the news about as like the news about like the dummy body of will be like spreading and even showing up on like the news and everything that even then like the connection to like the dummy body to Pranav and of the laboratory that and the still Pranav and his team would be like would be like actually succeeding in like using their power and influence to like prevent like such a news happening. The news being reported in such a manner where the uh, finding of Will's like dummy body, like the news about Will's dummy body would be like connected to would be reported as being connected to Brenner and his energy laboratory. Such a thing and those different to not happen anytime soon at all. It's like the scenario that I'm with the Brenner and his team like succeeding in preventing that from happening for a while for like a long time is like the scenario that I'm bringing on the question. Yes, so like definitely necessary impression as for like the scenario that I'm discussing as for like how exactly the line would be getting exposed as for this body being like a dummy body in front of like everyone that would be gathered for like the two of them. Just think about the reference that like would be precisely starting with Will's mother like totally rushing in to basically like show that mark on like one of Will's arms that basically Lonnie as well as like Jonathan would be like totally aware of that mark on one of the arms of Will. So Will's mother would be absolutely definitely fully confident that like it's definitely not Will's body. So to basically showing to Lonnie as well as Jonathan that like there isn't that mark on like Will's arm would be like the attempt of Will's mother while she would be like running towards Will's body and like as she would be trying to show that mark right then just like I'm the runner's team it would be like right there right beside like the body would be like totally cast all of their attention would be totally focusing on focused on at that point on Will's mother and they will be precisely stopping Will's mother at that point and that would be like the precise point when I'm considering precisely like Jonathan as well as Nancy as well as like Lucas like Mike as well as Justin would be like charging straight towards Will's body and I'm considering like them to totally quickly remove like the shirt of like Will. It's like the scenario that I was saying. And at that point, I was wondering they would be seeing that such mark that basically Hopper had basically through which that Hopper had seen found that like Will's body like a dummy body like through which like Hopper had basically found like the sponge I think like within with dummy body. So precisely at that point I'm trying to build through that precisely while like the focus of like the Brenner's team would be totally falling on to like Will's mother. Through that opening would be how I'm considering like Nancy Jonathan as well as Mike and his friends starting in and it would be them that I'm considering would be like totally opening up that whole scarf of copper the previous night like opening up the uh, opening up and like finding like spots in like the dummy body. So like them that way like opening up and that area and them like totally discovering that finding that sponge within the body and that way them it will be through them that I'm putting like the them taking out the sponge and then like totally straight away showing it to like the entire crowd before like all of like Brenner's team people like would be like would have by then would have stopped with some other would be like before they realize this and basically before they will be turning back and trying to stop like all the kids before then like the line would be getting exposed with Nancy, Jonathan as well as Mike and his friends like all of them together like showing all that sponge within the dummy body to like the entire like the crowd presenting like that to one of it. And that is how I'm considering like the light to get exposed as like the scenario that I'm observing. And at that point would be like even like the point where like all these teams, like all these three teams of like Nancy as well as Jonathan, that single person that's Will's mother, the team of Nancy and Jonathan, then the team of Mike, Lucas, and Justin. Dustin, like these three teams would be like recognizing each other at that point as like them three like possibly knowing about Will's body, already having known about like Will's body being like a dummy body. Is not the original Will's body. Like basically that way, like that whole connection happening, and like it will be from that point on and persevering. Like these three teams will be like exchanging all the information they know between each other. Just like the scenario that I'm listening to the and my person to. Okay, so like definitely my impression right now was like almost towards the end of like the funeral ceremony, like with like this talking being like in a close like fully closed like state. Like I'm also might have remained in that absolute close like state, and maybe even in like the coffin might have also been not just kept closed but also might have been sealed as well. It's definitely my and it might have been in that very same sealed up and closed up state ever since like the even like the beginning of like the funeral ceremony. It's definitely my preference. So like I'm also bring okay, so like specifically my preference right now, especially right now with like Master Charles being like the one to do like the funeral ceremony. I'm also bring with the entirety of entirely closed off, and I'm also bring like Pastor Charles would definitely be Pranav team member in disguise. It's definitely my preference. So like the Pastor Charles, he might have been like a new pastor that might have joined in like the church in like around 2006. Definitely my personal impression. So definitely I'm interpreting like the throughout the entirety of like the like funeral ceremony, like even from the very start of like, the funeral ceremony when like the coffin was then brought to like that location itself, like I'm interpreting definitely the coffin might have been in that very exact fully closed and sealed state. It's definitely my personal impression. Even though like the body of what like the previous team members had basically claimed to be like the dead body of Will had basically didn't have any sort of like injuries like extreme any sort of injuries to for like in order to like keep like the coffin in a fully closed like state. Yet like for like the coffin to be kept in like a fully closed like state, and for like the Pastor Charles to be like totally be okay with it, and I'm going to bring like definitely it will be potential because Pastor Charles would be for an team member in the guy was definitely my very intention. So like definitely my very impression that like this might look very nice like I'm definitely like Mike Lucas, Dustin, Nancy, Jonathan, as well as like Quinn's mother. Like basically, these people won't be able to like sleep this very night at all. It's definitely my friend. They won't be able to like sleep without like digging out like the coffin of Quinn and basically uh, like uh, like checking it. It's definitely my friend. So like that exactly is what I'm definitely to definitely happen because like I'm definitely like in like the middle of the night, like I'm different definitely it would be like precisely Quick's mother that would be definitely sneaking out of her home and basically without knowing, finding out, and I'm trying her to be the first person to like to show up to the cemetery where with like dummy body would have sister is definitely not so like sir I'm would be like the first person to like stealthily start digging to try in order to like try to like open up the coffin and like check the body of Will is definitely my favorite. So like about as she would be doing her digging I'm preparing precisely right and I'm preparing without much great delay I'm preparing Jonathan to show up the scenario that I'm preparing. So like Jonathan at that point can pick up with like the digging like the scenario that I'm going to bring and then I'm going to bring like without Mike and his friends would like show up, and I'm preparing like precisely as like Mike would be like trying to sneak out of his home. I'm preparing like definitely Nancy is totally catching Mike, and I'm preparing like Nancy as well would be like totally coming along with like Mike to basically, and I'm preparing like Mike at that point like totally trying to like say something out of the line for like him sneaking out. Yet like I'm preparing like Nancy totally possibly maybe being able to like see through the light. Especially from like it was like so close to Michael and I'm definitely somehow like Nancy might be able to like uh, see through the lies of Mike at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm considering and like them both like heading off to that process cemetery. So like I'm considering that collectively like I'm considering like the digging up of like the coffins of will to happen in like the middle of that very night where like of the day where in which like there was very definitely remember the neighbor. So like in that night, like them all collectively and right now, possible that would be like in the middle of the night, like while it would be when precisely at like the cemetery of Will would at like Will's grave would be where like I'm considering these three teams of people who knows of like the mystery behind like Will's funeral, like basically like and the possibility of like Will's body not being like of Will's body, like basically these three teams like meeting up for like the first time was supposed to happen on that very night, especially when the brain is so, like them collectively teaming up and taking out like the coffin and then opening up the coffin and it would be like together, like these three teams together would be like finding out that basically that their suspicion was like absolutely true and that like it's like the dummy body of Will. It's like the scenario that I'm only putting and my too. Also, the limit is very important. Is that like it would be most likely on the very night of like the day of like Will's funeral that I'm reporting like Nancy would be most likely like even finding out about 11 as well. It's definitely a scenario that I'm reporting, and I'm reporting especially what like they would all be collectively figuring out and basically first figuring out that like Will's body is like a dummy body. They would be confirming it like at that point I was reporting this mother probably wanting her uh, would be definitely wanting like all the help she can get. So like I was wondering like Will's mother would be desperately wanting to like get that information out to like the public like to uh, to have like the dummy for her to like basically take like show the dummy body of like Will in front of like everyone in like the town of Hopkins and like the next day would be like what Will's mother would be sort of really wanting at that point is like the scenario that I'm considering. But like I'm considering right then for like I'm considering like uh, and maybe I'm considering like them all. I'm considering like Bill's mother wanting to do exactly that. Maybe like Jonathan as well singing along this line. But like I'm considering them should be totally interrupted and stopped by precisely 11. I'm considering definitely 11 telling them that that would be definitely like the worst thing to do. Like that would be definitely such a bad idea precisely because of like that like they would be after you and they would like totally eliminate you. Like referring to 11 would be totally hinting and referring to like Brenner and his team that basically these people will be like if you do something like that these people will be totally eliminating you like along the lines of the point 11 thing and at that point like my principles like totally agreeing to like the things 11 will be telling them and definitely from that point and I'm considering precisely because of this reason I'm considering like them like Will's mother and all of them deciding to like keep that crucial information that like Will having died, that is like the dummy body of Will that had been buried, like with them keeping that crucial information a secret from the remaining everyone in like the town of Hawkins. Again, like about to bring from that night, like the whole that union and basically that team to be formed between like the team of like Mike and his friends, Mike Lucas, 11, and Dustin, and like Nancy and Jonathan, as well as like Jill's mother, like their whole team to be formed, like them doing their own like collective investigations into like figuring out and through like 11, like them all will be like collectively doing their investigation, trying to like save Will on their own. It's like that. It's like absolutely no one believing them, like them deciding to like save Will and Barbara like on their own with their collective teamwork. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm referring I'm referring to. Yes, so like the film by the reimpression right now as for like Brenner and his team like not having thought twice before like really taking like Benny's life solely for like the act of like Benny talking to 11 right now with like Hopper having even explored and even found like the portal within like the energy laboratory of Brenner, like even after like Hopper gaining such a crucial knowledge, the fact that like Brenner and his team has basically right now still the fact that Brenner and their team didn't take Hopper's life and even left Hopper back at his like home. About the bring it would be like my consideration that like if it is only due to the position that Hopper hold as like the chief sheriff, definitely my perspective. When compared to Penny, since like Penny wasn't like a chief sheriff and like since like Hopper is like a chief sheriff, like unlike taking Penny's life, like maybe like Brenner and his team might fear like taking the life of Hopper because like they might fear like the possibility that creating the positive doing such a thing creating attracting a lot of unwanted attention for like Brenner and his team, and that way unwanted attracting a lot of unwanted attention and unwanted trouble for like Brenner and his team. Might be like what Brenner and his team might fear, and that might be so little for like Brenner and their team, like even after like all this, like them still deciding to like leave Hawker alive. It's definitely my personal impression, and also my personal impression is that also definitely my personal impression right now as for like the tiny audio or video record that basically Hawker has right now found in his like home within like the light bulb. And those different things that would definitely be a decoy set by Brenner and his team to like only trick Hopper. It's definitely my personal impression because like they might not only expect and like Hopper to do that like that very same first throughout his home when he wakes up and finds that look for Hopper to find that first tiny device might be something that Brenner and his team might have totally expected, and that might have been a first trap and a trick for Hopper into like to trick Hopper into naively thinking that basically that would be like definitely surveillance that they would have put on Hopper. That's definitely my personal impression. So like I'm especially with like Brenner and his team having done all sorts of various like superhuman superpower gaining like superhuman experiments on like 11 and everything different, and then being able to like open up portals like show the parallel dimension and everything, like definitely considering Brenner and his team would totally be having like the technology to basically like put in the minute tiniest bit of like a device that might be able to like do audio or like video recording, and they might have installed that tiny device onto most likely by now onto like the body of it's definitely my preference. So like the current like you know tiny audio or video recorder device that Papa right now has found from like the light bulb in his like from the light device in his home would be totally a decoy to like totally trick Papa into thinking that that's like the only thing that the runner and his team has done to like the spy on Papa. It's definitely my personal impression right now. Yeah, so like definitely my personal impression right now with like runner right now having heard like the conversation between my friends during like this communication with like with mother, like basically I'm pinpointing like elements like person there like with my tens like that near bring without picture data like I'm to bring without any delay at all, like I'm to bring like runner with here right now precisely pinpointing to like the first time of like the radio conversation and like that and would be ending up in like Hawkins and the location, and they will be certainly ending up in like Hawkins school, and they are like I'm assuming they will get only one of like Brenner's men will be like talking to like the science teacher, and through the science teacher like think that Brenner's team member would be like in a cunning manner would be getting the information, stealthily getting that information that basically there were precisely three students of like Hawkins Smith school that were like present during that exact time of like a radio communication, like it was these three precise students like Mike as well as like Lucas as well as Justice as well as like a girl by the name Eleanor. Like so like that as well. I was to bring like and I'm going to bring like brothers men to like get all that information out of the science teacher in like a convincing manner, stealthy convincing manner. Certainly I was ready to do. Like straight away like I'm going to bring like from the random team instantly like being able to like figure out that so that Eleanor would definitely be 11. It's definitely my personal too. Like I was going straight away, like sending his men to like the houses of simultaneously to the houses of like Mike, Lucas, as well as Justin at the same time. It's like the scenario that I was trying. So like they would be like showing up most likely maybe disguised as like police officials and they're considering like them totally like making some excuse to like making up some excuse to like search the house and different like in such a manner like this wasn't the search happening in like Mike Lucas as well as Dustin's home precisely when considering like most likely during that time considering Mike Lucas as well as Dustin would be present in their home. Precisely when like Brenner's team member would be like showing up to their individual homes and doing the searches. Like the scenario that I'm looking at that point, it's like Mike would be straight away be able to like figure out that most likely these people would be most likely after 11. So like I'm surprised, but like Mike not being able to like do anything at all, and like this meant straight away searching Mike's home. And I'm wondering maybe at Mike at that point, like totally seeing like them quickly going into like the basement, and Mike would be like totally rushing towards like the basement, totally expecting an 11 to be captured by these people. Like at that point, felt I'm wondering like Mike getting that ultimate shocking twist with like 11 all of a sudden missing it like microphone. So like that's like the scenario that I'm also playing. Like Brenner and his team totally getting outsmarted by 11. But the limit of like 11 with some superpowers would be able to like while sense might have that superior sensing capabilities to definitely might have the so like which like 11 might have sensed that while runner and his like runner's team had basically infiltrated entered into like microphone itself like and was spring like 11 might have sensed that and 11 might have actually escaped into like the forest nearby like scenario that and was only the thing. So at that point, I was wondering like Brenner's team like not being able to like do anything like I was wondering like them not taking the life of like Mike Lucas or Dustin precisely because of like them not being able to like find 11. So like I was wondering at that point like I was wondering like them Brenner giving the order to basically his team to like precisely while searching for 11 lakh in the nearby areas, like that will be the first order that runner at that point will be giving his team members at that point. And then the runner will be also assigning one of his like another team member to like uh, precisely from that day on to like always spy like Mike Smith, three kids like Mike, Dustin as well as Lucas. Like the scenario that I was delivering. So like solely so basically, my question that like at that point, like solely due to like the runner totally at that point feeling as if like Mike Lucas and Dustin are the key for like runner to be able to like get to 11 and find and capture 11. So only due to this reason alone, I'm the different like runner giving the orders to his team to like not take the life of like Mike Dustin or Lucas, but to like at least constantly secretly follow them and spy on them. That scenario that I'm referring. So like I'm referring like in the case of 11, I was referring that where 11 at that point might have only ran away and escaped towards, would be precisely towards like that forest in that precise area of like Mirkwood. It's definitely not the primary goal. Like there are those referring like 11 to like wander around that area in like the forest of Mirkwood and I was referring 11 totally ending up finding there are also different 11 totally finding that castle buyers like that their whole secret home was like castle buyers in like the middle of the forest. Like they are about different 11 to totally hide there. It's like the scenario that I'm about to bring. So that dog as well that have right now Doric Will's the owner that had like gone and gone to like the castle of Will buyers like and those that dog as well obviously would be like Will dog is the limit of the rebel. So like 11 entering there and basically 11 all by herself hiding there and with like the company of like the dog of Will. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. Like at that point I was like 11 and like the dog totally bonding a lot. It's like the scenario that I'm bring. So like then I was like Mike and his friends would be like and I was precisely uh, especially while like Prana's team members would be like simultaneously searching like the homes of like Mike, Justin, and Lucas at that point. Still, like I was suffering with them not being able to like find 11 in those three homes, like them. I was suffering totally getting angry and frustrated, and those men I was suffering like totally maybe like in an angry or like a threatening manner, like maybe them even questioning, like trying to question like Mike Lucas and Dustin. So like unfortunately like Mike Lucas and Dustin at that point putting that absolute fake act as like they don't know anything like what are Eleanor like I'm bring them like those people of are asking them where is Eleanor. So like at that point I'm different like Mike and the friends like totally putting on the fake act like Eleanor who like basically as if they don't know who Eleanor is like basically. So and like they so considering certainly the people of Ukraine are not being able to like threaten or like get angry too much before that itself I'm considering like the families of like Mike Dustin and Lucas totally interfering and stopping them and like I'm considering like to totally avoid gaining like unwanted attracting unwanted attention and get the runner to like avoid getting into trouble and prioritize self and I'm considering like at that point like self like the runner falling back as men like the scenario that I'm considering. So after Brenner would be called back as men like I'm different for the time being. I'm different like it would be that at that point itself I'm so like my those reimpressions that like basically Brenner's team would be like leaving like home of like Mike, Dustin and Lucas. At that point itself, I'm preferring like Mike getting a call most likely from Lucas, telling Mike that it these people, these mistreated people have basically searched all of the showed up to our home and searched our home. Like so, Dustin might have already called like Lucas and told about like these people showing up. So I'm preferring at that point Lucas asking Mike if the similar kind of people have basically showed up to like Mike's home. So like at that point, I'm preferring Mike to totally tell Lucas to like basically to stop the whole communication through the radio phone. It's like the scenario that I'm messaging. Especially because like I was talking, Mike alone would be able to like most likely by then would have figured that basically might be through like the radio phone getting tapped that basically these people would have like who are after like 11 might have showed up to their phone would be along the lines. I'm preferring Mike to like figure out the like I'm preferring Mike at that point saying some sort of like a code word or clue and it would be totally the clue and the code that like at that point Mike would be telling through the radio phone to Lucas and Mike would be telling Lucas that code and that code would be for the translation of that code between that would be code that only like Mike Lucas and Dustin alone knows. So like the code between them would be precisely to like the translation of that code would be for like three of them to like quickly meet at the forest of Mirkwood. So definitely my prescription without any radio phone contact, like the scenario that I'm delivering. So that way, like I'm delivering through that code communication, I'm delivering my Lucas, and like the time as well would be communicated through like the code by my Lucas, and Lucas would be like telling that to get and I'm delivering especially during that exact time of their meeting of like I'm delivering like Mike Lucas and Dustin like showing up to like in the middle of the code so like definitely the repressions that like according to the code, like I'm looking in my latest kind of thing that's actually showing up exactly according to the time translated, communicated through the code, like them meeting up at like month code. And I was bring them totally deciding to them totally discussing about like the situation and like they would be discussing the situation and then like I was bring like this like 11 Mike with like 11 missing I'm bring like Mike totally telling them that maybe like since like the last time we saw 11 was like this because the first time they had seen 11 it was in that Marcos forest like maybe 11 might be present there in this forest of Marcos would be around the lines maybe like Mike would be saying so like I'm picturing like Dustin and Lucas and Mike right at that point deciding to like search for 11 in that forest of Marcos and at that point after like them I'm picturing them to let up a lot and them totally getting tired after surfing and not finding 11. So like at that point, I was preferring the dog of Will. I was preferring to like probably show up towards like the Mike and for to be. And at that point, I was preferring Mike and for us like totally being surprised by seeing that dog of Will. So like I'm preferring uh, that job would be what I'm preferring would be like then leading Mike and friends to like the safely casting fire where like they would be totally shockingly finding 11 there hiding in that for 11 hiding all by herself in that casting fire like the scenario that I'm preferring. So from that point on I'm preferring casting fire being like the ultimate meeting spot for Mike and his friends to like only meet up with like 11 and do their whole investigation and discussion and investigation and everything. It's like that Cassie Bias being like their perfect hiding spot for like their operation to continue their operation of finding and saving Will is like the scenario, even the scenario that I'm considering. Yeah, so definitely my very impressions that like from that point on that whenever like Mike and his friend would be like communicating through their radio, through their code, and like still for them to like meet up at like Castle Bears, even then like I'm considering Mike I'm considering even before that like I'm considering Mike would be totally having that feeling that basically like these people who are after the definite possibility of these people who are after 11 like most likely having possibility of like them totally secretly spying on Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. And like I'm also bringing like Mike also coming to the conclusion that like that would be the sole reason for like them not taking the lives of Mike, Lucas, and Dustin exactly like 11 said. Like the sole reason for them not taking their life would be precisely because of them wanting to like get to 11 and like Mike, Lucas, and Dustin them totally thinking that Mike, Lucas, and Dustin are there only way to get to 11 and capture 11 could be along the lines of even Mike would be able to like, figure out eventually is like without much great at all, it's definitely one with trainers. So like so precisely because of that, like from that point on, like after every time Mike and his friends would be like meeting up at like Castle Fire, like they would be like having the task to like ensure that like basically they make it there to like Marcos to Castle Fire without without having like anyone follow them. So like I'm considering like Mike and his friends like following up all sorts of strategy to like ensure that like they don't get followed by like the people who are like after like and it's like also like the scenario that I'm observing. Mike and friends each time that they're coming up with like all sorts of strategy and possibly even disguise to like basically and maybe that's like also like a possibility that I'm observing with Mike and his friends like basically even using disguise as like the ultimate weapon to like trick like the people runners people who would be like stealthily spying on them to like basically them all meeting up at like some place at a mall or like some place and they leave them secretly like secretly within like some location within that building or somewhere like them secretly like doing their disguise and leaving that building and like with the disguise they will be like showing up to like castle buyers and that way tricking like the people who would be like spying on them foreigners people who would be like spying on them. It's like along like the eventual possible scenarios that I was in all the programmers of the revolution. So like the thing about the revolution that like eventually once like Brenner's team would be showing up to like Mike Lucas and Dustin Storm and that way like Mike eventually would be like finding out that their radio conversation are being tapped by like the people who are like upper 11. So like at that point I was looking like the such code that like Mike Lucas and Dustin will be using to like communicating to communicate between each of them. Like and those codes will be precisely uh, uh, information and things from like that precise like their game of like Dungeons and Dragons. Like I'm considering it to be hidden details from like the game of like the Dungeons and all sorts of like unique details and stuff from like their game of Dungeons and Dragons that I'm considering my games will be totally using as codes to like totally communicate with each other. And that way like still and that way like that totally working out for like Mike and his friend outsmart Brenner and his team for like a great while it's like for like at least some great amount of time is like the scenario set and until eventually like Brenner totally figures it out and figures out their code and usually like usually ends up outsmarting like Mike and his friends. It's like the scenario that I'm referring. But until that point, I'm referring Mike and his friends like successfully succeeding in like outsmarting Brenner and his entire team using their codes from Dungeons and Dragons. It's like the scenario that I'm referring. I'm referring. Okay, so like definitely not I'm position right now like for like Professor Clark's like explanation of dimensions to like Mike Crispin and Lucas like in this explanation like the professor himself Clark himself getting sidetracked from like the acrobat to a flea to him like explaining about a flea like but like that professor getting sidetracked to giving focus to accidentally giving focus to the flea and considering that would definitely be a foreshadowing of that basically eventually precisely 11 being that flea ending up eventually ending up being that flea that can totally go beyond. And like I'm considering like 11 would be like the fleet at that point, and I'm considering Mike Lucas and Dustin will be the acrobats, and 11 would be the fleet that allows like Mike Lucas and Dustin to like eventually be able to like end up into like the parallel universe or like dimension. It's definitely the scenario that I'm considering, and I'm considering right now definitely my birthday impression that like all the experiments that like runner has done performed on 11 and basically as to like the precise reason for like 11 being so extremely important for runner like it don't have to do with like and also definitely I'm specifically to my birthday impression that like a portal might have definitely not existed like I'm thinking runner might have definitely using this like experiment might have created like a tear in time and space and might have created like the portal and like how exactly runner might have created the portal it might he might have been definitely 11 it's definitely one of those variables so like the all these experiments being conducted on 11 to with the difference would be most likely to increase that superhuman would be to like for 11 to like attain superhuman levels of like mind power and using that power like coupled with like all the rich energy sources that would be present in like Pranav laboratory. I'm also like the experiment performed by Brenner on 11 might have been with the intent to basically for like the Fox by Brenner for 11 to attain that sort of human strength using which like 11 using that sort of human power would be able to like amplify, like seriously, like greatly exponentially amplify the energy, like the huge quantity of energy being produced in like the energy laboratory of Renum. So that like that would be like more than enough. So that like that way the required amount of like energy that basically that according to class like humans can create like that level of energy like within 11 cells like Renner might have created such extremely high levels of energy using with which like how Renner in like the past might have created like the there in like time and space, and that might have been how like the very first like humanoid creature like water creature might have entered first into like the real world and might have abducted like the very first scientist in like Brenner's laboratory in like the beginning. This is definitely my personal theory and prediction. So like this might have been how like Brenner might have been able to like create that portal in like Brenner's like energy laboratory. It might have been precisely solely due to like the help of like 11 and 11 like superhuman mind power. This that's all the Lina Sundari and Rishon right now with like Professor Clark like explanation about like the the possibility of like possible multiple great number of variation of like parallel words and parallel dimensions like I'm talking like what Brenner might have totally attempted might have been like in actuality might have been to like especially open up like the door to like a parallel dimension using 11 and like Brenner's guitar might have been like what Brenner might have hoped through all this experiment might have been to like open up like a parallel dimension that might have Brenner might have expected like the parallel dimension to be like a pleasing and basically well far advanced like parallel dimension where like one might have only expected like a world similar to like similar to like the real world yet like a world that's like far advanced than the real world so that like perhaps could like totally like gain all the knowledge from that advanced world and maybe to use all that like advanced knowledge for like perhaps like scientific progress and basically in like the real world or like for Brenner to like totally uh, out of it like obsession to science and scientific advancement like I'm thinking Brenner wanted to like maybe explore such parallel worlds that are far advanced than like the real world might have been like Brenner like in actual desire and goals definitely was a revolution but like and my Dr. Impression that like in the very beginning like what might have happened might have been like Brenner might have precisely find the Adam of like in order to like achieve this, in order to open the black portal to this like parallel dimension, like Brenner might have had like 10 past test subjects who might have all failed in that experiment and the different like Sarah as well as like that other so like my real question that I was sitting on this the possibility of like Popper's daughter Sarah as well as like her I daughter like possibly being like test subjects of like the Brenner whom Brenner might have affected and made into like possibly made into like test subject and performed experiments on and I'm going like in the experiments like Sarah possibly might have died. It's also like a walk that I'm considering. But I think like Taria's daughter had really returned back to like Taria. So like that might have been like Brenner's maybe especially when the damage. But like Taria's daughter in the case of Taria's daughter, even though like the experiment Brenner's experiment might have ended up being a failure, still like Taria's daughter might have survived the experiment. But in the case of like Popper's daughter Sarah, maybe like Sarah might have ended up dying. It's like the scenario, possible scenario that I'm personal prediction by the brain. So, and like Brenner back then might have like totally also tricked Hopper as well. And so like the three pressures that like maybe Brenner might have like framed like Sarah's death into like basically into making it seem as if like it was like an animal attack in like the wood like basically and that way like even Hopper as well might have only gotten tricked by Brenner and like the past is also like about that episode. So like anyway what might have happened in like the very beginning of like the show might have been precisely Brenner might have a schedule with like the 11 test subjects Brenner's daughter 11 becoming, and hence like Brenner's daughter's name being 11, and her the experiments on her being like finding a success. So like the 11 test subject might have ended up being like a success, and that being 11. So like I'm wondering after Brenner might have been totally full of excitement and joy on finding out 11th experiment was like a success. So like at that point, like runner might have and his entire team might have scheduled like their attempt at opening like the parallel dimension for like the very next day. Definitely would remember. So like what might have happened would be like one of like the team member in like runner's team might have not been able to like wait until like the next day, or might have wanted to like steal the credit of basically opening like the uh, of opening the portal to the parallel world for himself, or like maybe he wanted to to do it himself, like the opening of like the parallel world himself, and maybe like he might have stealthily stayed in like Prana's lab at that very night, and I'm wondering like he might have secretly might have unlocked the room of like 11, and might have that secret that member of Brenner's lab might have without Brenner and his team's knowledge might have unlocked 11, and basically might have forced 11 to use her like superhuman mind power, and basically in the middle of the night he might have that scientist might have opened up like the portal, and he might have expecting like friend of like he too might have been expecting something pleasant and fast advance of like an experience of like a parallel world on the other side to be getting open, but like I'm funny totally contrary to like even Brenner and his expectations, like basically the scientist expectations as well, like basically the parallel world that might have opened up might have had this like humanoid creatures like totally taking over like the entirety of like that parallel world, and that might be basically my perspective is that the sort of like this monster humanoid monster will be precisely because of like that exact parallel world, the parallel version of Brenner in that exact parallel world, like basically his experiments on 11 might have been different, and that experiment on like the battle version of 11 might have been different, and that experiment might have only gone wrong into like resulting in like 11 being turned into like this monstrous humanoid creatures definitely within so like when precisely this scientists in like 11 team in that very night, like basically before like the very next day of like the scheduled page of using 11 to like open up like the barrel words for runner like before that scheduled date, like in the middle of the night, like that kind of like cheating and without runner and his team knowledge, like him using 11 to like open up the portal, and the moment 11 might have used her powers and opened up like the portal itself, like after doing just unpleasant like parallel world might have opened up, and like this the parallel version of 11 turned into like a humanoid monster from that parallel world might have entered into like the real world at that point itself. Just like what might have happened. It's definitely my personal theory and prediction right now, and precisely that parallel version of 11 would be like the monster creature like might have only escaped from Brenner's laboratory after precisely abducting like that scientist. Uh, what would be what might have happened is also the kilometer prevention, and precisely with that like a most streets of gone from Pranav lab, and since it to be like most likely cheating by that kind of that might have he might have left them that precisely because of this all this rich man considering 11 at that point might have been all by herself unlocked from her home in Prana's laboratory and all by herself in Prana's laboratory. So like that way, like that situation might have been how like the opening was created for like 11 to be able to like certainly be able to be able to like escape from Brenner's laboratory through that fight from Brenner's laboratory, leading to that through that huge fight from Brenner's laboratory, leading to that force. Um, what would be what might have happened if definitely my history emerged. So like the film of history operations that like even though Tarangat had basically sent his like son Shepherd into exploring that parallel dimension with like Shepherd like possibly definitely having died like and still I'm considering like the actual true intent behind like runner and his team right now being desperate to like catch up 11 will be precisely to once again use like 11 like superhuman powers to basically maybe 11 like the power of 11, using the power of superhuman powers of 11 like it might not just be like the opening of like portals alone that will be possible, even closing of like the portals as well might be possible. So like Neil Brenner and his team like current like the spread desire to like chapter 11 will be precisely to once again like use the superhuman powers to like basically possibly maybe close like the unpleasant parallel world dimension portal and basically open up a new another different parallel world portal using like 11's power. And especially if it's like according to like Professor Clark, there are like there's like about multiple great number of like or infinite like parallel world dimensions like 15 like if there could be like such a possibility. I'm considering like Renner's goal would be to like explore each and every single one of these and like expecting that uh, better like the parallel world dimensions to be opened like the next time uh, portals to be opened like the next time would be like Runner's plan is definitely my preference. This might be the best reason for like Runner right now being so desperate for like to capture 11 is definitely my secondary impression right now. So like definitely I'm still sticking to my secondary impression that basically eventually like the user empathy pretty precisely and sold it through like the help of 11 that I'm bringing like the current opened up portal in like within like Runner's laboratory would be like eventually fully closed, fully and permanently closed and sealed. Like I'm referring that eventually happening and that eventually being like precisely 11 being like the first person even doing that towards like the very end and feeling that portal. It would be precisely 11 that would be like doing that towards like the very end. It's like also like the event of scenario that about to bring and but at the same time, I'm considering new portals. After that, like new portals not being opened and runners precisely getting captured and arrested by the sheriff hopper and basically Brenner being brought to justice and basically Brenner sent to prison. Brenner and his possibly his entire team possibly eventually being sent to prison. Or like the other possibilities like Brenner, more likely possibilities like Brenner most likely dying by that monster creature, while like the remaining team of Brenner like basically will be getting captured and imprisoned and sent to jail. It's like the scenario that I'm considering of the program about English. Okay, so like the syllabus is very interesting right now for like this Dale and Henry that have right now gone missing. Like I'm considering like performance is very interesting that like Dale and Henry the most likely subordinates of Sheriff Hopper. It's definitely my book very interesting. So I'm considering as for them going missing, I'm considering it to do precisely the abduction by Brenner's team with like the precisely tend to like turn them into spies to work for Brenner to precisely spy on Hopper. This is definitely my preference. Spy on Hopper and be that absolute obstacle whenever Hopper tries anything to like on top of like spying, secretly spying and reporting each and every single action of Hopper. Like on top of that, like making it like making this that much extreme hard for Hopper to like precisely like bring down Brenner or his like or cause any sort of trouble for like Brenner or his, like kind of the laboratory would be like the precise intent with which like to bring it to the Brenner and his team itself and not like the monster creature that would have totally been like the reason for like Dale and Henry right now going missing. It's definitely my book better. So like definitely I'm considering like Dale and Henry to like return back without much delay at all. Right now, like as they are missing, like right now they will be definitely present in like Pranav like kind of the laboratory and they will be certainly having interactions with like Pranav's team or like maybe most likely Pranav's team, like they will be having interaction and then Pranav's team like offering them like possibly tempting them with like some sort of like an offer which like they simply won't be able to like refuse. So like I'm considering Brenner and his team Brenner might have take order his team to like study like the subordinates of like offer and basically like Brenner's team might have figured that basically Dale and Henry are like the most vulnerable that they could like that they could like get them to like the side of working for Brenner might have been what might have happened is definitely my level. So like that way, like I'm trying that right now without much great delay at all, I'm just trying like Dale and Henry returning back safely. And at that point, like Hopper, about the bring like initially not suspecting anything, and about the bring like initially like that they Hopper initially for uh, a few for some time like able to bring like just for like a short time able to bring like offer that we're getting like outsmarter by Brenner and his strategies by especially Dale and Henry like gently reporting to like uh, Brenner about everything inside every plan and every intention for like offer and everything. But like able to bring like without like creating like offer being able to like figure out that Dale and Henry are now spies of like Brenner working for entrepreneurs. So like even at that point, I was wondering like after Popper not being able to like, do anything about it, and I was wondering like Taylor and Henry like with that absolute stealth being like a serious obstacle for like Popper in his like path to basically bring down Brenner as well as like his like energy laboratory and everything like that. And considering like that could be like the danger scenario that I'm going to bring in as a so like the flavor was the intention right now as for like purpose, one of purpose like subordinate like asking like the other subordinated like purpose of his mates like and considering like Hopper might have definitely been taking medication to maintain his sanity ever since like the day he found out that his daughter Sarah had died. It's definitely was the eventual like since they like Hopper might have had this like issue with him where like he might definitely need to have the meds regularly in order for him to like stay sane, or else like I'm considering maybe like Popper might have hallucinations. This is definitely my considering as well. Like I'm considering like with like the entire situation in like Popper's life, like ever since like Prince disappears, like turning more and more uh, extreme of like a situation for like a Hopper to handle all by himself with like him like having absolutely no one to like not even a subordinate like being able to like understand Hopper and all that like since like all that burden is on Hopper to like figure this out and to bring down Renner and everything and so, save Will and everything and considering the pressure getting too much for Hopper that eventually I'm considering Hopper totally forgetting about his meds and that causing like Hopper and Hopper starting to like get a lot of hallucinations in such a manner. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm going to talk about in the frame picture. And I'm also personally also thinking like the possibility of like this eventually leading to that Hopper getting either suspended or like dismissed from his job as well as like the authorities like maybe also through like Renner's like influence on the like Hopper getting either suspended or dismissed from his job. Citing that is like unfit for his job. It's also like an ancient scenario of like a topic that I'm about to bring, and that way Hopper eventually losing his job as like a sheriff and basically from that point on Hopper still determined and still not giving up and Hopper doing his like investigation in private from that point on uh, to basically find Will and save Will as well as like bring down Brenner and his team. Like basically it's also like an eventual possible scenario that I'm sitting on to another film. Okay, so let me name the Korean version right now. So that basically 11 of all people like telling Lucas that she doesn't know what like the gateway to like the battle world. So obviously like 11 obviously lying to Lucas only due to like the memories of her days in like Run of the Love of Run up as like a prisoner like basically and the experience and everything that those memories totally haunting 11 even to the present. Is definitely my remember the last thing that 11 right now would want to do would be to like even if it's for to save Will for like 11 to like basically head back to like the energy laboratory of another 11 will be well fully aware as to like the portal and 11 might have only seen that energy portal and 11 might have been like the precise person that might have been like the key and like the sole reason for that portal even being possible to be opened in like runners like energy laboratory. Definitely my reaction. So yeah. Okay, so like definitely my reaction right now as for like all the compasses like basically not facing like the true north, get like all of them like facing that direction. I'm going to make it to be precisely the direction of like runner energy laboratory. Definitely my reaction. So the reason would be precisely due to that extreme like magnetic field that I'm developing from that whole energy laboratory and like the energy experiments that of Pranger ambassador using with which like he might have totally induced like 11 as well to like the past to like amplify all that energy and like magnetic field present there to basically open up the portal. So like about like even with like elements disappear, all that energy and all that magnetic field would be still present in like like energy level. And this would be like the precise reason for like that intense like superiorly intense quantity of like magnetic field from like the like energy laboratory would be like the precise reason for like all the composites pointing that north direction, and that direction is precisely towards like another laboratory. So like right now, considering it to be right now through the still discovery right now that I'm considering like Mike and his friends like totally tracing that direction and totally walking towards that non-north direction of all the compasses and like them ending up in at like precisely like the gates uh, of like energy laboratory, and that way like basically therefore investigations ending up with like uh, ending up with like in the direction of like Brenner's energy laboratory, like the user scenario that I'm very interested. So like as they would be like make following the direction of like the compass and basically as like they would be making it towards like Brenner's energy laboratory itself, I'm also very definitely who are 11 totally getting uneasy and like 11 would be like totally hoping deep down that basically they don't discover like runoff and of the laboratory and like by the time they would be making it and realizing that that like the direction has led to like runoff like energy laboratory. At that point I was bring like 11 are refusing to like go further. It's also like the scenario that I'm doing the thing. And then like I'm considering like that point would be when like I'm considering like finally 11 would be forced to like open up in front of like Mike and her friends, like the scenario that I'm considering. Open up about her past, about like her tragic life and her like all the days about her days at like energy laboratory as like a prisoner and everything like basically. I'm considering that deep talk between 11 revealing everything to like Mike and his friends to only happen at that point, like the scenario that I'm considering and my personal reactions. Okay, so like definitely personal reaction right now as for like pronouns like energy laboratories like exceptionally strong electromagnetic field affecting like compasses like I'm considering like it's a range in which like it would be like the laboratory would be affecting compasses and considering would be extending all the way to like the entirety of like the town of Hawkins. Is definitely my personal immersion. So like I'm considering it wouldn't just be like Dustin alone that might have first noticed like the compass acting crazy in like the town of Hawkins. Definitely my personal. So like I'm considering like the situation would be like absolutely no one at all in like the not even a single person in like the town of Hawkins being able to like use the compass would be like the current situation, like the scenario that I'm describing. So like I'm wondering, but still like it might have not like situation might have not turned out in such a manner for a long time. Like I'm wondering, it might have only been recently that like Pranav, that scientist in Pranav laboratory in like the very beginning when he had gotten affected by like the humanoid creature like that incident, like it might have since like that incident might have actually happened like only recently. I'm thinking like it might have not great number of days might have passed since like the whole compass was all throughout like the town of Hawkins like acting crazy due to like the excessively strong magnetic field from like the left end of the laboratory stepping over the brain. So like I was wondering like Renner might be like fully aware of such a situation happening. So like Renner might have totally foreseen the self. Renner might have totally even while like great number of people in like the town of Hopkins might have also noticed like the compass was acting crazy and might have followed like the direction of like the to which like the non-north direction in which like the compasses were focusing on, and might have they might have also uh, followed the direction and made it to like the gates of that the Nebula runner. And maybe at that point that maybe some of them might have even complained to the sheriffs, but like the complaints might have not reached the sheriff over. And I was bring like definitely like even like the people in like Hawkins might have complained that basically like this laboratory was causing all these issues, causing issues where like none of our components are working. Might have been that might have existed along such complaints definitely was the thing. So again like I'm bring like a friend might have exerted his influence into like silencing such complaints from gaining any sort of like news attention like all across the world, especially remember the from like a whole an entire town to like basically have none of it like competence working at all in like an entire town solely due to like the presence of a single laboratory basically, even though that might have had like such extreme news value and might have made news all across like the world, like I'm considering yet like I'm considering the sole reason for it not ending up being like a news might have been solely due to like Brenner and Christine exerting like their influence and like keeping the news separate. Might have been what might have happened. It's also like a possibility that I'm considering and my book real question. Okay, so like definitely not a very interesting right now as for like Lonnie showing up right now solely having to do with like him possibly wanting compensation from like Brenner's company for like Wills that like I'm considering. And right now with like Will's mother like right now finding out about this I'm considering like definitely a huge quarrel to right now happen between like Lonnie and Will's mother. It's like the different scenario that I'm considering, and in that quarrel I'm considering like Lonnie showing just like true colors, and I'm considering like both Will's mother possibly being attacked by Lonnie, and I'm considering like right then itself I'm considering precisely Hopper will be showing up, and I'm considering Hopper showing up and Hopper coming to the rescue of like Will's mother at that point itself, and I'm considering like the fight to break out between like Hopper and Lonnie. And I was thinking like at that Lonnie on seeing Hopper at that point itself, like Lonnie would be having that extreme anger towards like Hopper, and Hopper at that point as well would be like probably extremely enraged with like Lonnie attacking for his mother. So like I'm thinking the fight to happen between like Hopper and Lonnie at that point, and I'm definitely putting like Hopper totally not only offering Lonnie but like totally putting Lonnie in his place, and like Hopper totally threatening and even scaring Lonnie is like the scenario that I'm looking. And with that, like Lonnie, and right then itself, like I'm looking like his mother will be so extremely fuming and angry with Lonnie that I'm looking like his mother right then itself revealing to like Hopper as for like the sole intent of like Lonnie even showing up and all that. Like, and I'm considering like Hopper at that point is like totally threatening and scaring Lonnie and telling Lonnie to like totally leave and to never come back to that town or something. And like that and with that I'm also bring like Lonnie will be like straight away leaving like the town park, and this is like the scenario that I'm looking on the topic and my very impression. So like also right now with like also like the cinema was very impression right now it's like Nancy all prepared with like the baseball bat and Steve showing up, like I'm with the friend definitely no matter what Steve says, like I'm with the friend like Nancy will be definitely won't be like wavering at all in her decision to basically to totally destroy that thing, that monster creature, and with like Jonathan's help to like destroy that monster creature and that way prevent more affection and disappearance. It's definitely there will be that feeling of absolute responsibility within like Nancy, especially with like her guilt deep down still possibly remaining as for like her possibly being the reason for like her feeling that her definitely being the reason for like Margaret disappearance, especially because of that emotion of guilt and everything. I'm going to bring like Nancy totally refusing to go with like Steve's like the scenario that I was doing. So like at that point, Steve would be like that to come to be a total shock for Steve, especially because Steve might have only had that or confidence that basically that like Nancy would be like totally listening to like whatever Steve says, and basically would be like coming along with like Steve might have been that or not which might have existed within Steve, and that backfiring would be totally hurting Steve's ego, and I'm also bringing like Steve to totally get irritated, but like Steve totally hiding all that irritation, and I'm also bringing Steve totally acting putting on the fake actor, which like he's totally okay with like uh like Nancy doing whatever she wants to do instead, and I'm also bringing Nancy totally making some sort of like an excuse to like Steve and for her to like secretly meet up with like Jonathan to like for them to like collectively search and find that precise monster creature in like the Mirkwood. So precisely at like Mirkwood, like that forest like I'm also bring like they will be only searching in like the Jonathan and Nancy and also bring the like meeting up in like Mirkwood and searching for like that monster creature, and they are like about to bring like whilst they would be searching for the monster members different like Jonathan and Nancy would be also like actually interacting, and I'm considering like the bond between Nancy and Jonathan like growing deeper, and I'm considering while all this would be happening. I'm simply preparing for them to not encounter the faceless monster in that forest right now, as like they will be searching for that monster in like a Mudford is like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like their current search ending up being like pointless, not yielding any results, with them not being able to like find the faceless monster in like Mudford is like the scenario that I'm going to bring. Yet like through that them both spending time through their whole search, like while they them both would be spending time, like the bond between them would be like definitely everything would be growing closer and closer and deeper, reflect the scenario that I'm going to play. And while all this would be happening, I'm going to bring like first Steve would be totally like stealthily like spying on Nancy and secretly would have followed Nancy to the point of like Nancy going up to like McFood and meeting up with like Jonathan and basically their interaction and them getting close. Like all this would be like I'm going to secretly would be like spied by like top and spied by like a jealous an extremely jealous Steve is like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And this thing to turn Steve into like to an extreme jealous bully. It's like the scenario that I'm bring, and like after like witnessing this, like I'm Steve to like totally bit stock and witness this, and Steve to be like extremely getting enraged and jealous of like Jonathan and like I'm to bring like the next day at school, like I'm to bring like Steve totally showing up with like Tommy and Carol to like totally fully like Jonathan in front of like Nancy, like the scenario that I'm to bring. And at that point as well, I'm to bring like Nancy totally definitely at that point, Nancy totally protecting Jonathan, just like the scenario that I'm to bring. Jonathan still at that point as well would be like totally feeling kind of like submissive solely due to like I'm bringing like Steve and Tommy and Carol bullying for Jonathan with like the whole incident about like the photos and everything once again. And that totally affecting Jonathan and turning Jonathan submissive. But like I'm also bring at that point, Nancy is only defending Jonathan and basically protecting Jonathan. And I'm also bringing at that point, like Steve being to like Nancy as well, like the scenario that I'm also bringing. And at that point, Steve most likely would be like also revealing to like Nancy to like basically him having seen Nancy and Jonathan in like the Boston Mudwood, and for that like I'm also bringing. So like Nancy would at that point would be seeing that absolute jealous bully kind of like a person in Steve at that point, and that would be like totally creating that absolute dislike within Nancy towards Steve. And I was putting like Nancy totally like straight away like saying something harsh back to like Steve, and basically that way like at that point is when I was putting like Nancy most likely would be like even breaking up with like Steve, like the scenario that I was putting, and Nancy saving with like Jonathan from that location, like the scenario that I was putting, and that at that point like Steve feeling even more defeated and Steve's ego getting even more sucked up like the scenario that I was putting, and was like Steve's like still keeping on stalking Nancy, like the scenario that I'm playing. Still stalking Nancy and Jonathan with like the scenario that I'm about to bring. Maybe like I'm about to bring Steve while Jonathan will be by himself after that incident, like while Jonathan will be by himself, like I'm about to bring. Maybe like Steve probably attacking for Jonathan is also like a scenario that I'm about to bring. And I'm about to bring Steve still not like letting go of like Jonathan and Nancy. I'm about to bring like Steve even after that, even like the next week or something, like I'm considering Steve once again like trying to like bully Jonathan and Nancy, and this time and that time like the future I'm considering Steve would be totally like maybe bullying Nancy, and that I'm considering would be that regarding fact that would be like totally getting rid of that submissive nature, or finally getting rid of that submissive nature of like within Jonathan, and basically at that point, like while he in like the front of while in front of like Jonathan would be like a totally pulling Nancy at that point. I'm also bringing like Jonathan to like totally most likely put Steve in his place, like the scenario that I'm looking at. That being like the ultimate shock for like all of them, like Nancy, like Steve, Jonathan, as well as Carol, like all of them being shocked with with like Jonathan finally showing that absolute dominance and basically putting Steve in his place, like the scenario that I'm looking for again. Like definitely Nancy at that point, like feeling safe while beside like Jonathan. Nancy at that point totally feeling safe in like Johnson's company and while beside like Jonathan, and that way like the whole bond of affections between like Nancy and Jonathan, like even being stronger and deeper was like the scenario that I'm representing and my personal reimbursement.